Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time on Doctor Who Classic, we had The Edge of Destruction, a First Doctor serial. Dad, what happened last time?
Well, like Victor Frankenstein, we found out it's alive. The TARDIS is alive and was trying to tell the Doctor and his companions that something had gone wrong.
Yep. Pretty much. The Doctor tried to take everyone back to Earth after their adventure on Skaro, but in order to do that, he hit the fast return button, and it just got stuck. So he ended up taking them to the beginning of the solar system, which was very bad for the TARDIS. All the TARDIS energy was going to leave. But they ended up figuring it out, and they figured out that the TARDIS was actually a living creature, which was interesting. Today we are moving on to The Web of Fear, a 6-part episode from the Second Doctor, which also includes, in fact, I think, part 3 of this is technically missing. So this will be our first experience watching a reconstruction, which I believe will just have the audio from the episode and just images like from the set for like each scene. So
okay,
yeah, it happens. There's a sizable amount of episodes from the early days that were lost, and luckily some of them we can watch this way.
I read somewhere that some of these were like found in Africa, like in Ethiopia, where they were broadcasting them there. So that's just I find that fascinating.
Yeah, someone had to keep a hold of them somewhere.
Yeah.
So
but, that is understandable. We were talking about and reading in some of the comments about the Doctor Who movie with Peter Cushing that they didn't do reruns back then.
No, they didn't.
So it was, I guess, just very fortuitous that some of these, I guess it's on videotape, or maybe it's just on actual film. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's just wonderful that we're able to see stuff from 50 years ago.
Right. And that's also the interesting thing with, there's not any reruns, although the first episode was technically rerun, wasn't it, because of the Kennedy assassination?
Yes, I think they said it ran the next weekend as well. And then they ran the second episode right after that.
Yeah. So. Well, it's also interesting, too, because with a show like this, you almost feel like if you miss the last episode, you're just lost on whatever is happening. Unless you happen to be at the beginning of a story, like if you were at the beginning of the Daleks or the first episode of The Edge of Destruction.
However, that being said, you have to understand there were also what they call serials in the movie theaters.
That's true.
The late 40s and early 50s, and I guess right up until the early 60s, they were still doing Buck Rogers in the 21st century, 23rd century, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And Flash Gordon, and there was Batman, and some of the others that were actually playing in the movie theater. So I guess people were kind of used to it.
I guess, and I don't know, maybe back then there wasn't a big maybe desire to keep the continuity, just so you understand. As long as you can go in and have some fun, maybe that was all that mattered. So, but luckily we do have the third episode of this in some capacity, and it'll be interesting once we get there. But in order to get there, we have to get through all the other parts first.
All right. So,
we might as well get started, because this is 6 episodes long, and we said we wouldn't do that again, but here we are anyway. With that being said, this is where we say no spoilers in the comments for anything. And, let's just go ahead and get started. Here we go. Okay.
Jamie! The doors! We've got to close the doors! Can you do
This
it?
is also, I believe, 4 episodes after Tomb of the Cybermen. So, obviously we missed something else, but...
Damn it, he knows it's a robot!
But Father, the Yeti isn't dangerous. Well, it can't work unless it has a control unit.
But I've done it, Dad.
Didn't we
I
leave
have
off
reactivated
with
the control unit.
Edge of Destruction, going to the Himalayas and meeting the abominable snowman?
Yeah, we did.
That's disconcerting.
Well,
It's gone. It's disappeared.
this is 4 seasons later.
Have the Yeti back, Julian. Stubborn old goat.
Father!
Take him away! Out of the house!
Father, look, perhaps you made a mistake.
I don't know that 50 years ago I would have
Away
noticed
somewhere in
the
your
phony
laboratory
beard.
and forgotten it. You've done it
Oh, on
before.
him.
Obviously, a younger man they're trying to make look older.
Oh, well,
Well,
let's go home and
Makes me wonder if
then, shall
they're
we?
going to youthen him up at some point.
Well,
'Cause,
maybe.
I mean, seriously, they could have gotten an actor of the correct age.
Well.
All about it.
Always a good idea in a museum full of priceless antiques to have live flames.
Yeah.
Something strange has happened. We're suspended in space.
You see what I mean about the use of these mood music there, which we were totally lacking in Edge of Destruction, which made it very, very hard to watch because it was such long pauses with no sound whatsoever.
Well,
Do you want a coin? Oh, yes, that'll do, Jamie, I think. Just get that in there.
Troughton seems a little more confident in this one. Remember, he seemed
Here we are,
kind of
that's what-
addled and befuddled
What's it do?
in the
Nothing.
Cybermen that we watched.
Oh, no.
Well, nothing yet. But it will do once we start moving again. Oh!
Oh, do you think we
they're
ever
putting in a
will?
lot of
We've
setup
been
for
here
this
so
one.
long.
Yes, of course we will, Victoria. Jamie, I think we're going to need torches.
To alleviate any confusion, that's the British word for flashlights,
yeah.
not actual torches.
I will say it's interesting how much they use the scanner in these early episodes, because the Doctor would never do that in the modern Who.
This is Villar's room. Tiled walls,
Subway station.
curved ceiling.
Is it always as dark as this?
No, it's probably the middle of the night. Come along, let's go up top. There'll be lots of life up there. Funny, isn't it? What? How we keep on landing on your Earth?
Now, I remember that Jamie was like a Scottish Highlander, but I thought she was modern.
No, I think they picked her up
It's not the middle of the night,
in
it's broad daylight.
Victorian times.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me.
Londoners flee, menace spreads.
Maybe it's the Yeti.
Did you see his...
Makes you wonder if this was on location or if they actually built this set.
What are you doing, Doctor?
This is getting out of hand. Now there are two of them. Like a little string sprayer they got.
Again, though, the professor's daughter being a scientist, that's very uncommon for this time. So Doctor Who is somewhat forward in its treatment of women.
Yeah.
What's a girl like you doing in a job like this?
Obvious sexism.
Well, when I was a little girl, I thought I'd like to be a scientist, so I became a scientist.
Just like that. All right, they were on their own. Okay, Weems, no sense in wasting any more time. Off you go.
Right, so.
Now, hang on a second. See if I recognize any of these names. Okay, never mind. Again, I some of these actors look very familiar,
Well,
so I'm sure I saw them somewhere on British TV.
well. Okay. That is part one.
I have to say the writing is much tighter. Again, as
Yeah.
much as we liked Edge of Destruction, especially the second episode, here, I mean, there's a very, very clear plot.
Yeah.
The characters, despite the fact that the military men are supposed to all be somewhat alike, the staff sergeant and the Captain Knight, they're all distinct characters, and it's a lot tighter. It's more of an action type sequence.
Yeah.
It gets your attention. So.
Going to more places.
Yeah. And again, it's been a while since we saw Tomb of the Cybermen, but even Troughton seems to be more energized than the last time around. Again, he struck me as being somewhat, befuddled, and maybe that was just the way he was being played in that particular series.
Yeah.
But he seems much sharper and clearer and just easier to watch.
I will say they kind of toned down the comedy from Tomb of the Cybermen, because Tomb of the Cybermen was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
This one is like, okay, I'm interested in the story. What are we doing here? Where are we? Why did London flee from this menace? Is it the Yeti or something?
Yeah.
Or Yetis at this point. So yeah, this one is definitely interesting. So
Come on, let us out! Let us out!
Makes you wonder how the web got out into space to trap the TARDIS, though.
yeah. Well, I also wonder if maybe the Yetis aren't connected to the soldiers, which is why it didn't just flat out explode right then and there.
40 years ago.
What's going on here?
Oh, Jamie, don't you recognize him? It's Professor Travers.
So it is Professor Travers. Hasn't he got all?
Huh?
Oh, but we're very pleased to see you, Professor. Very pleased.
So that's why they needed
Time
a young
machine.
man playing an old man.
I guess. Same
It was
actor.
all true then.
Hey, wait a minute. Where do you think you're
He
going?
may be lying injured.
No way to found him unless you know where he is.
I might.
Take me to him, could you?
Aye.
Right, well, go on then.
It's always fun to try to translate the Scottish accent and the Cockney accent. Although it's not pure Cockney, but still.
Difficult to explain.
Not half as difficult as it is to believe.
See, when they bring in Scottish people in modern Doctor Who, they tone down the accents a bit.
Run. If guns don't stop them, run.
Yeah. But have you tried aiming for the eyes? I've played enough video games to know aim for the eyes.
What's that noise? The boxes are pulsating.
Well, that didn't work. Try aiming for the gun. They're web shooters.
Oh, switch the soldering iron on, will you?
Father, have you ever seen this TARDIS?
Interesting pronunciation of soldering. He pronounced the L in it. It must be a British thing.
Maybe.
And I saw the Doctor defeat those robots and save Detson Monastery. He wouldn't do that if he was in league with them, now would he?
Okay. Now I think I remember
No,
the schedule maker
don't
told
say
me
it's
this
not.
is a sequel
The
episode,
situation like this, one
technically.
imagines all
So,
sorts of things.
But did Hartnell pick up Jamie and Victoria?
no, I think
It's getting on my nerves.
I think that's Troughton that does that. So, and I know there is a Troughton episode called The Abominable Snowman.
Okay.
So, I don't know what they did in the next episode for Hartnell, but
How'd they get here in the first place? Come through the post, didn't they? Nah, seriously. Out of space, that's where they come from. Well, that's what I reckon anyway. Oh, do leave off.
Come
You've
through
been
the
reading too many
post.
kids' comics, you have.
It's on the move again, Weaves.
King's Cross gone out and it's moving on to Farringdon.
It's never moved as fast as this before.
Hasn't moved at all the last 3 weeks, miss. What started it up again all of a sudden?
No, I can't say.
Strange, isn't it? That this
It's gonna be a Doctor Who episode without the Doctor in it?
maybe.
He hasn't.
Did you hear something? What? Listen. Look! The fungus is here!
All right.
I love how again, never heard this. But of course, like in the United States, a staff sergeant would be referred to as sergeant, but here he's referred to as staff. The corporal is just called corp.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was an episode without the Doctor. I mean, technically, we got the clip from the end of last episode where it starts exploding and gets out of there. But, yeah, no Doctor whatsoever. Man, it's turning into Ghostbusters 2 almost, with all the goo going through the subway.
I kind of got that vibe too, but that was interesting.
Yeah. And now we move on to the Reconstruction episode. That'll be fun.
Makes you wonder how they got the audio but not the video.
Yeah, like were they separate or I don't know. Well, maybe someone will leave that in the comments.
But definitely action-packed. I mean,
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be anything extraneous. You got the antagonist there, the smarmy fake news reporter.
Yeah.
We suspect that somebody's either going to, punch him in the nose by the end of the serial, or he'll find some way to end up in the cobwebs.
Yeah, hopefully. I don't know. He is pretty. I mean, he is just doing his job, I guess. But
that's paparazzi journalism. It's sleaze. If he were there to report, that's one thing, but he's there to agitate.
Yeah.
And that was a problem even back in the 60s.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, do you know what season this is?
I believe this is season 5.
Okay.
Season 5, episode 5.
Trutton's second season?
Yes, okay. I believe so.
So then somehow in the 4th season, there had to be an episode with the Yeti.
Yeah.
And yet we think that somewhere in the 1st season of Hartnell, there was a Yeti.
Yes, which is interesting because I guess to let you in on a little secret, I don't know what happens in the 4th episode after Edge of Destruction, but I do know it's called Marco Polo. And I don't know how that works into it, but we'll have to see. Luckily, that is the first one. Once we get through all this 50th anniversary stuff, that's the first one we're going back to.
Okay.
So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what that one's all about. Okay.
One moment.
Victoria.
Oh, Dr. McInnes, all right.
Well, you'd better fetch your father. He'll want a word with the doctor. And you carry on here, staff.
Well, this is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Afternoon. Captain Knight.
Good afternoon. Colonel...
Lethbridge-Stewart. Expect you're wondering who the devil I am.
Oh, it's the
Well,
Brigadier.
as a matter of fact, sir, yes.
It would seem that the professor's in charge down here, Captain.
Yes, well, he does have a job to do, sir. I think it's best to let him get on with it. Don't you?
Yes, well, as I say, when I came to, there was...
So that's interesting. So this is the introduction of the Brigadier, Colonel Lethbridge-Stewart. Yeah. Do you remember him? He was in Terror of the Autons.
What do you mean?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah.
What, Victoria?
Well, presumably once the sphere started working, the intelligence just homed on it.
Yes, with a fully functional Yeti.
The professor looks a little like me.
Sorry to interrupt.
I was going to say,
Professor.
he gives off a
Colonel
lot of Orson
Lethbridge-Stewart
Welles
has
vibes.
decided to hold a briefing.
I notice we're not talking a lot.
It's not the most exciting episode.
So, Yeti approaches the Fortress Explosive Store, rips away the padlock, and enters. Okay. What was
Good
the
to know.
triangle thing? What was that all about?
This will explode in 60 seconds.
Yes, just push the trolley down the gradient.
I thought they said that was the intelligence,
the
but
Yeti stop it before it goes off.
didn't
When it
work.
comes into contact with them, it'll blow up at once. The Yeti have dealt with the explosives here, and I'm willing to bet they'll do the same with those at Hoban as well.
Maybe.
I think
Who
you're
do we
wasting your
suspect?
time now, Colonel.
The
Yes.
reporter
This is
or
the chance. We
the
must-
female scientist?
Search completed, sir. Headquarters all clear. No sign of Yeti. Good.
the reporter is a little obvious, but
Good Lord.
Well, that was interesting.
yeah. Unfortunate that there wasn't enough to actually talk about. Even if it was full motion, we wouldn't have probably said anything.
Yeah.
But luckily, we did see the introduction of the Brigadier, which was interesting. Because, like I said last time, I'm pretty sure there's something in each of these episodes we're watching right now to sort of, things that are being established to lead up to the 50th anniversary. So, last episode, it was the TARDIS being alive. This time, it's introducing the Brigadier, who is a long-running companion. Though I don't think this would ever come back into play in the 50th anniversary because he's dead by now. We already had him at the end of season 6. We got the confirmation on Doctor Who that the actor had died, and so the character died too. But it's interesting to see his introduction here. Before he was even the Brigadier.
Now, Terror of the Autons, was that the one with the Master?
Yes.
Okay.
That was the third Doctor story.
Yeah, plastic men.
Right. Now, even if the reporter is part of the intelligence, they shouldn't be able to get into the TARDIS or know how to fly it, right?
Tottenham Court Road, down to Leicester Square, up past Covent Garden. Come on, follow me.
I've been to all those places. And it was 66, not 65. Into my freshman year of high school. Got to do a trip down to London.
Therefore, I do not intend leaving any escape route unexplored, however screwy you may think it.
Oh, surely, Colonel.
Let's get on with it, shall we, Knight?
Sir.
Don't call me Shirley.
What's in the tin, Doctor?
It's the fungus from the tunnel. I thought if we examined it, it might give us a clue. I must get this dismantled. It's like holding a time bomb.
You know, at some point he should get the sonic screwdriver.
Right.
And it is this doctor that does it, so...
For a police box.
A police box, sir?
Yes, a police box. Now, I want that box either out of the station or onto the trolley as quickly as possible. Is that understood?
Yes, absolutely.
Right, any questions?
Yes, sir. This police box, is it important?
Called Lake. We'd hardly engaged the problem if it weren't.
Arthur Conan Doyle, in his Sherlock Holmes series,
I'd like you to
had
stay behind, look out from
what
Captain
applies
Knight.
here,
Not to
basically,
stop what you do.
when you have eliminated the impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. So, I think the Colonel Brigadier is saying, I know this sounds like it's stupid, but we've eliminated everything else, so let's do it.
Well,
Don't you try to skive off, because if you do, I'll have you for breakfast, you understand?
Trolley's ready, sir.
Right, come on!
I guess we should have expected him, with his weird face, that he was one of them.
Look, sir!
You know, I feel like if you get a good running start, you could just drop kick him. But it's nice to see the outside.
It'd be funny if they ran into the junkyard.
Yeah. Come on, go for the eyes, go for the kneecaps.
You've got a bazooka. Use it.
Yeah. I thought that was the whole point of taking it.
Commitment of innocence.
And again, aim for the gun. Great job, Doc.
Well, it's certainly more action-packed than practically anything else that we've seen.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, let's just move on. Still got two more.
Well, again, not a whole lot of reacting from us, but it is very easy to watch. The plot is not convoluted, like Edge of Destruction.
You know, sometimes I think, man, we should be talking more in these. But then when I go in and edit them all down, we have just the right amount of talking to work for a video. So,
And with 6 episodes essentially being 3 hours, nobody wants to listen to us for 3 hours.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I don't know. I doubt anyone's really doing full length on this episode. Or if they are, they're just skipping to the episodes they want to see. So, I, for this episode at least, am going to lean back a little bit and try to relax and watch the episode. So, part 5.
The intelligence. The intelligence got me.
Notice the forehead lines are literally drawn on because he's not old enough.
For this man's voice that will drain all past knowledge and experience from your mind.
This is interesting. We don't normally get a classic story like this. You know, someone wanting his knowledge. You see that a lot in Modern Who.
Yeah.
We must work out a plan.
Well, you do what you want. I'm going.
Or not.
To stop us getting away. If I can reprogram this sphere to obey our verbal commands...
Yes, but can we do it? I mean, in the time.
How long have we got?
12 minutes.
We've literally done 40 minutes in 8 minutes.
Oh, boy. As good as this episode has been, could still stand to be an episode shorter.
How'd you get here? I thought poor Victoria's.
Oh, he's okay.
What happened, sir?
That's good.
Is that the staff sergeant?
Yeah.
Do you think you can get to
I think so.
Oh, try it. Yeah, we'll get over.
We'll have a powerful ally.
Inside a Yeti?
Yes, certainly. Will you help us?
You must be joking. Go near one of them things. I may be stupid, but I'm not daft.
Very well, then. I shall have to do it by myself.
Convenient flap.
Right, quite safe.
Well,
Nearly out. There.
I mean, I don't know why they had to
Right.
dress up robots as Yetis.
Now then. Turn round.
Heel, toe. Heel, toe.
Now then.
Putting on the Ritz.
Programs here and your control box. We should be...
Go on, Sven. Out of it.
It's the blob.
Well. Okay.
Just reminded of that bit in Young Frankenstein. Where he gets the monster to dance to Putting on the Ritz.
I haven't seen Young Frankenstein.
Oh, you must see Young Frankenstein.
Yep. Oh, we are on a bit of a time crunch now. Worst case scenario, let's see, the episode itself is about 20 or so minutes, which will give us about 30 minutes to talk. Worst case scenario, at the end, this becomes a podcast.
That does get annoying, that beeping.
Well,
I'm guessing that's the intelligence.
probably.
Being taken, Professor.
To meet the intelligence.
Is that the reporter?
I guess.
There's no alternative.
Yes, you are right, Professor. He has no alternative.
It is interesting that we're on episode 6 and we still don't know who the traitor is.
Yeah.
To welcome you personally.
Has he just had that this whole time?
Keeps it in his pocket, I guess. Again, first thing that comes to mind is the Slim Whitman music that kills all the Martians in Mars Attacks.
Haven't seen Mars Attacks either.
How is this possible? Now, I will say, the action here in the climactic episode has slowed down somewhat.
Yeah.
That could have been tightened up. Sidney Poitier, Rod Steiger. That would be In the Heat of the Night, I think. Well, that was like 67, so that's about right. So that poster could have been from the sequel to In the Heat of the Night called They Call Me Mr. Tibbs.
Are you all right?
Prepare for a great darkness to cloud your mind.
Attack now! Attack the Yeti!
Do you mean to say that Arnold wasn't the intelligence?
No.
You mean it might come back?
Well, it's still around, isn't it? I failed.
Nonsense, man.
You were marvellous.
Yes, great victory.
I doubt it.
No, you were a hero.
Well, we can have another sequel.
Well, it doesn't matter anyway. I mean, there's no danger, is there? Not from the Yeti, no. But who knows, they might suddenly start the trains again. Come on. Trains? Oh! Come on!
All right. Well, I have to say the denouement was not completely satisfactory. I mean, yes, obviously they're setting up a sequel, but after all of that to have it come down to, Jamie not following orders.
Yeah, we could have done that 2 episodes ago. That's always our thing with these classic episodes, is somehow each and everything we watch could be at least 1 episode shorter.
Yeah.
I don't know how we always, circle back around to that, but they're always just 1 episode off. It was good.
Well, yeah, I mean, seriously, right up until the last 5 minutes, it was thoroughly enjoyable, and I understand why they did that. Obviously that's a good villain, and they want him to come back, or it to come back, but it just seemed a little contrived.
Well, and also, because we're watching this out of order. This is already the sequel, but I don't know. I have no idea if the intelligence comes back. I don't know. They're not in modern Doctor Who, and they're not in any of the serials we've seen after this. It does make me slightly wonder, I've said, we're building up to the 50th anniversary. Maybe that somewhat builds up, or maybe the next serial that we watch, which is a 3rd Doctor serial, maybe that does pick up. Maybe we're going to get back to the intelligence. I don't know. He definitely seems to be a rival to the Doctor, long before the Master was even introduced. So that's interesting. But
yeah, kind of slightly disappointing, because good writing right up until the very end, and then it just seemed to be too much of a manufactured ending.
Yeah, just they wanted to set up another sequel, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
What do we have?
Oh boy. Well, let's see. We've got about half an hour of storage space left on the camera, so
we'll talk fast.
Yeah, well, either we'll talk fast, or if the screen just cuts, I'll just put up an image, and the audio will keep recording, so we can keep going with that at least. So, okay, the first thing I wrote down was just the Yetis and the menace of London. So, pretty much London was abandoned because of this mist. And
that seems to be, yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't entirely set up very well, but again, I'm assuming that's because that didn't really matter to the whole story here, because they didn't want to have to deal with millions of people in London. They just wanted to keep it contained here in the tube system.
And all of this is because Travers was messing with the one orb that it drew the intelligence there. And obviously, we haven't seen the serial where they encounter the intelligence in Tibet and we first meet Professor Travers. But, I mean, I feel like we got the gist of what happened.
Yeah.
Let's see. Pretty much the entire episode takes place in this subway system, which is interesting. We don't get a lot of like these early episodes where it's not just, or it's like a bunch of different locations and stuff, or even just outside. You were even saying like, did they film this on location, or did they, build this set? I'm not sure which it would be, because
the thing about the underground is that they could have built like 2 or 3 sections and then simply film it from different angles, and it would appear
it could have
much
worked
differently. So, but yes, I mean, the sets were very good. I mean, certainly, dark and spooky, too dark in some instances, but yeah.
Yeah, and it was an interesting location because we had to keep going through the tunnels, and you had to really keep track of where they were, and they still had the HQ, and then where the Doctor and Travers' daughter were making the machine to control the things, and then at the end where the intelligence was overall. So there were at least some varied sets in there.
And no fake trees, no jungles, no vines,
no forests. That was nice. Let's see. I wrote down Professor Travers. He was interesting, and it makes sense when you said, that's just a young man that they dressed up to be older, but it makes sense they brought back the character to be 40 years later, and now he has a daughter. It's interesting because, with this being a sequel, they brought back Travers, they brought back the intelligence. Makes me curious about the original serial because, like what were they... Like, how good of an episode was that to warrant a sequel? I don't really know how many episodes have gotten sequels so far in the run, other than, I believe, I think Tomb of the Cybermen is not the first appearance of the Cybermen. I think they appear in Hartnell's era first. And I do know that Victoria's first story is actually a Dalek story. So,
my one problem with Professor Travers, again, now that we understand that they probably brought back the same actor who had been a young man, is that having been on stage for so long and having played older men, that is stage makeup.
Yeah.
The lines in the forehead, the whole works, is something that you do when your audience is not right up next to you. I'm really kind of astounded that for close-up work on TV, that the camera's just a couple of feet away from you, that they wouldn't have done some more subtle way of doing that. I mean, up to and including latex prosthetics and things like that. And again, also the fact that if this is 40 years later, now, granted, I have all my hair, but he seemed to have a whole lot of hair for a man in his obvious 60s or 70s.
It was an interesting, I don't know, kind of comb over or something that he had. And then, because you were saying the beard looked fake, that must have been, the classic way of, how do you show that time has passed for this character? Well, you add a beard. Yeah. They did that with Captain America. They gave him a beard to show that, time has passed, he's been on his own and stuff like that. So it makes sense, but it wasn't... I don't know. Now, it's a problem that, this is in black and white, so we can't fully see if he has color in his hair. But were they trying to go for a white beard?
It certainly seemed that way.
Yeah.
Or gray, very much like mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, 40 years ago when I was playing old men, I always took shoe polish and colored, gray in my hair and my beard and everything. But again, I was never more than about 20 feet closer to the audience.
Right.
But here, again, for close-ups like that on TV work, that makeup was so incredibly obvious.
Yeah. And I wonder how much of his performance changed from the last time he was there. Because, 40 years passed and now he's playing this, older man. I would imagine he is trying to play up that he is this character older. And like I said, he kind of had an Orson Welles vibe going on, which was interesting. We had the webs and the fungus. That was just kind of there, wasn't it?
There was, again, very little explanation, and again, not sure how. I mean, the whole thing. What was it? The web of deceit. The web of what?
The web of fear. Yeah.
Okay, I understand that, but you don't associate webs with abominable snowmen.
Right.
Now, I could have understood if it was some kind of frost or crystals or snow.
Yeah.
But the web didn't make much sense.
Yeah, the fact that they were going around and spraying these webs to contain explosions, and we had the fungus going around and kind of just blocking off areas at certain points. But when you take a step back, you look at the whole thing, the whole point of everything that happened was for the intelligence to get a hold of the doctor so that they could, he could drain the doctor's mind. I feel like, though, what exactly was the purpose of the fungus and the webs? It seemed like it took so long to get to a point of, we're just going to take this guy and put him in a machine. It took a while to get to that point.
Yeah. And the whole web in space thing, was that to get his attention, to make him land? It seemed like if you got a web around the TARDIS up in space, just go ahead and take him there. Of course, then you wouldn't have a 6-episode serial. But
right.
So again, the writing is not incredibly good. But again, the thing that I will say for this serial is that the action, for what it was very good. It was it was crisp. You kind of could follow it relatively easily.
Yeah.
Again, my big complaint though is this: they went for what I consider a cop-out ending.
Yeah, it was very. It was a rushed ending, which is odd again for a 6-part episode.
Yeah.
Which normally they don't do. Like, the Daleks was 7 episodes, but there were various reasons why it had to be that way. And they've really stuck to 4 parts until this one, and then the only other episode we've seen that's longer than 4 episodes was Genesis of the Daleks, but that one made sense for it to be that long. This one was 6 episodes, but I feel like it didn't need to, and then to have that rushed sort of ending just seemed odd. Let's see. We did have the introduction of the Brigadier. Not the Brigadier technically in this, he was the Colonel, but it is interesting that when he appeared and said, "Oh, I'm Colonel Lethbridge-Stewart," and I'm like, "Oh, that's where we're going in this one." Like, all right, cool. Let's introduce him. So I did like that, and it's interesting that because they already bring back Professor Travers for this one, so it's like, okay, there must have been either this character made enough of an impact, or just that story was popular. So when they wanted to make a sequel, they're like, "Oh, why don't we just bring that character back?" Yeah. So it's interesting just to think that just off of this episode, they were like, "You know what? Let's bring him back."
And the daughter, what was her name? Susan?
Maybe. I don't remember.
Okay. Barely looked 40 years old. So if Travers said, "I saw the doctor 40 years ago,"
yeah,
that would have been before the girl's time. Or she would have been very, very young at that time. You can't imagine a 3 or 4 year old up in the Himalayas, up in Tibet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That was just a minor point. So
yeah. Oh yeah, and technically I don't have it written down, but we did have our first reconstructed episode that we watched. I guess we could just sort of briefly mention that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was interesting.
Relatively easy to follow.
Yeah.
Again, the only problem that I had as an American is the British accent when you can't actually see their lips moving. When you only have the still picture, is sometimes hard to follow. But again, in 1965, 66, nobody would have ever thought about that.
Right, and also the fact that I find it the hardest when there's multiple people trying to talk at the same time. They're trying to talk over each other. That's when it gets really hard in these classic episodes. Because, like I said, people have actually told me that... I guess at least in modern Doctor Who, when you have an accent, you are told to tone it down. Maybe not particularly the English accent, but right now we do have a Scottish character, and her accent is nowhere near what Jamie's is. And Jamie, just at a couple points, I'm like, I'm not sure I caught that.
Again, I don't know if anybody had ever thought about it, but the people who reconstructed it might have considered doing subtitles.
Subtitles might have worked,
that would have helped out there. But, your Scottish accent, it's one of the hardest ones. I mean, we've had, most famously, Mel Gibson, who's an Australian, who tried to do a Scottish accent in Braveheart. I mean, it's painful to listen to him.
Yeah. But other than that, honestly, the reconstruction was fine. Luckily, they put in enough images. Now, I don't know how many of those are specifically taken from this episode, because I'm not sure how reconstructions are made, honestly. It's like, okay, you don't have the video, but you have the audio. I'm not sure how that works, but there was enough. They always made sure that that whoever was talking, you pretty much got an image of them, which was good. So it made it easier to follow, and luckily, also, the fact that that episode didn't have too much going on in it made it easier to follow as well. Okay. I guess speaking of accents, the reporter's name, I could never figure out exactly what they were saying with his name. Was it Charlie, or was it supposed to be Charlie, but they just kept
I don't know if we can actually run
Yeah,
the thing there and see.
Let me look at the skip to the end here. And, not too far. Oh,
Chorley.
Yeah. Chorley.
Harold
All right.
Chorley. All right. Harold Chorley. Now,
okay.
Here's something odd. Can you roll that back? Because...
let me see here.
All right. Professor Travers is Jack Watling, and Victoria...
Passed it already?
Yeah. Is Deborah Watling. So...
Oh, yeah.
Wonder if... I mean, they're obviously related, but I
makes
you wonder... brother and sister, father-daughter. I don't think he was old enough to be her actual father. Because he didn't seem to be more than like in his 30s, and she's probably in her mid-20s. So maybe brother and sister.
I guess I don't know. I can never pinpoint Victoria's age, because she seems like just the normal young girl that the doctor would take, and then I guess when the intelligence is like, oh well, the child will be unharmed. It's like, oh, I don't know, is she 18 or something?
Well, I suspect she's in her 20s.
Yeah. Maybe 20's playing an 18-year-old or something. Yeah. Let's see. So, so Chorley. That's...
Okay.
That's a name. He was really just there, wasn't he? I thought they were going to go somewhere with that, and then he just dropped out for 3 episodes.
He's the classic red herring.
Yeah.
He acts so suspicious that you keep wondering, is he the one? Is he the one? And then especially at the end when the staff sergeant says, how did you survive, sir?
Yeah.
So it all points to him, but that's to make sure that you're not thinking, was it the staff sergeant? Was it Anne? Whoever. Susan, whatever her name was.
I don't know. Maybe
we could go back and look at that.
Let me see.
Professor Travers. See, that's what
Professor Travers,
Chorley,
and the Yetis.
Well, she's got to be back up there somewhere.
Yeah. So that's Victoria again.
All right, so here we go. John Evans, Arnold, Anne Travers, right. Tina Packer.
All right. So yeah, I guess he was just kind of there to be the red herring, and honestly, I guess it makes sense that he went off to go try to find the TARDIS, and he's gone for 3 episodes. It must be.
Yeah. But then the doctor was gone for 1, so that must have been interesting.
Yeah, but at least I don't know. At least the doctor was doing stuff. I don't know. It's like he just kind of left, and it's like, well, maybe they just didn't have a purpose for his character at the moment, so they're like, all right, well, let's just get rid of him. We'll just kind of talk about him.
A Doctor Who episode without the Doctor in it, that's just...
It was interesting. Yeah. I wrote down the street fight, fighting all the Yetis on the street. That was at least interesting. It gave us a change of scenery, and none of the guns worked. They had to use the grenades and the bazooka if that worked, and then...
Yeah.
Even then, I guess there were just too many of them. Let's see. The intelligence wants...
One of the things about that, as just minor point, and again, I'm not a military man, but I would think that if the colonel had said, all of you, all 5 or 6 of you with rifles and handguns, if we all fire at the same Yeti, that should have the explosive force of a grenade, at least not the bazooka. But once we knock one down, then we can all they were randomly firing, and I noticed a lot of hip shooting, and I don't think any soldier would fire that. I mean, these guys are trained marksmen, and that was a bit of a, again, just something that I don't think real military men would have done.
Yeah, and it is interesting how the Yetis really seem to be almost invincible. It's like they just did not care about bullets, and you would think if you hit and if you all hit it maybe the same spot, it should drive through basically. And I do know one time they did hit the eyes because one of the Yetis covered his eyes and then fell. It's like, so you can hit the eyes. Why haven't you been hitting the eyes?
And somebody even said shoot him between the eyes, but I don't remember who that was. I just seem to remember hearing that.
And then the intelligence wants to take the Doctor's mind. That is the first thing we've seen now in these classic episodes where they really, I don't know, play up like how great the Doctor is, I guess. Like we haven't gotten that with Hartnell yet, but they haven't really gone into how alien he is in the episodes we've seen so far. But yeah, this is the first time it's like, it's like, okay, I want all your knowledge of the past and stuff. And this is the Doctor maybe at 500 years old. You know, he's not too terribly old yet, because I see that a lot on modern Doctor Who, and he's like 1,000 at this point. Once you get into the Matt Smith era. So it's like, it's interesting just at this point, even this Doctor, it would be worth just taking everything.
I mean, this is something that again, modern day people don't really think about, but you and I, as history majors, if you go back 500 years, you're literally looking at, Columbus and the New World and the Renaissance, and all of the information accumulated between year 1500 and today is an astounding amount of information. So yes, even at 500 years, he would have, if he had the knowledge just of this planet, he would have an enormous amount of knowledge that could be useful.
Right, and that's also everything he knows as a Time Lord, which I'm not sure how much has been said at this point, or even if the rest of the Time Lords have been introduced in the series by this point. But that is just a lot, just 500 years of traveling through time and space. That has to be a lot. Even if you took the Doctor, in the Edge of Destruction, where he's maybe 100 years younger, it's still a lot to take, and it's a lot. It would do you a lot of good to take that knowledge. Let's see. Controlling the Yeti, that was going to lead somewhere, and then it just sort of, Jamie just attacked them, which was interesting. I did like the fact that they were able to control one so they could finally fight back, but they just didn't do much with it.
Yeah.
So, I wrote down Evans, the driver. I thought he was weird. Like, I guess they must have also been going for him as a red herring.
Yeah.
But he just seemed too weird. Like, he always had this goofy face on. I don't know. It was interesting.
I will say this. At one point, I was going to make a comment about the staff sergeant, because, again, this is just in my experience with especially British movies. The sergeant major is usually the character who is, he's the bridge between the enlisted men and the officers, always considered to be the, rock solid person. If you need something done, it's not necessarily the officers who are going to do it, it's going to be the sergeant major. And I was going to say something about how the staff sergeant there seemed to be holding the whole thing together. And again, I think they may have specifically used him as the mole, if you will, because again, in my experience, the British public would have looked at him and said, "There's no way that he was the guy," because he's like the one guy that you can always count on.
Right.
I don't know if you remember, we watched that film Zulu a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
and again, the sergeant major in that one is, he is literally the guy that holds it all together. The two officers are both inexperienced, and here's the sergeant major who's had 20 years experience, and when that final battle comes in, even though the officers are in control and giving the orders, this is the guy who's making it happen. So
that's true.
I thought that was a very nice switch there at the end when they said, "Oh, it does happen to turn out to be the sergeant," which is sad because he had actually died and they had simply reanimated his body basically.
Right.
But that was a good way to throw it off.
Yeah, that was good, and especially too because they were building up the trust that even we would have in this character. Because I was thinking, when he went into the fungus basically, and then he pulled out the one guy, and it's like, oh, the other guy's still in there, and I was just thinking like, oh, I kind of like that guy. He's kind of an interesting character. So that was interesting. And then the last thing I wrote down was cutting off the intelligence from Earth. just the ending and how they did that. So the intelligence is still out there, so they can set up another episode. I don't know, it'd be interesting to see when that intelligence comes back. I don't know, but it was all right. It's just a rushed ending.
And again, I mentioned earlier and I will probably leave it in, the thing about Sherlock Holmes. This is a very Sherlock Holmes ending in that, when in the novels, Holmes and Moriarty end up at Reichenbach Falls in the Swiss Alps, and they both go over the railing and supposedly fall to their deaths. And then 3 years later, Holmes reappears because the idea was that it was so popular that they had to have a way to have him come back. So whereas essentially Moriarty had fallen over, Holmes had somehow managed to hold on to the side of the cliff and not die, but understood that he could disappear for a couple of years and get his head on straight or whatever. I mean,
yeah.
So in this, what they've done is they've essentially sent the intelligence over Reichenbach Falls, but there's always that opportunity. It's still out there somewhere, and if it proves popular enough, they can bring it back.
That's true. In sort of the same way, they kind of just did that in modern Doctor Who, where basically the Doctor fakes his death because there's these whole group of people that want to kill him, and he thinks, okay, for the longest time he thinks, all right, my death is a fixed point in time, I can't avoid it. But at the last second, he does find a way to avoid it, and when he does, he's like, all right, I'm just gonna stay quiet for a little bit. I'll still do what I do, but I'm just gonna tone it down. I got a little too loud in the universe, and when I meet them again, I'll deal with them later. But for now, I need to chill out a bit.
So overall, I would I'd give it an A- or a B+. Again, literally right up until the last 10 minutes, there was very little wrong with it. I mean, good writing, good sets. Again, love the music in it. The whole works. It's just that it was disappointing. The ending was just a little too disappointing.
Yeah, I'd probably say the same thing.
But I would still recommend anybody, again, should watch it because, again, Troughton I thought was very good. Much better, I thought, in this one than in Autons. Not Autons. Cybermen, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Overall, I'd say this is pretty good too. Just a bit of a rushed ending.
Yeah.
So, but that is basically it. Let's see. What do we got next week? The Curse of Peladon. That's what we're doing next week.
Never heard of it.
Nope. We're going back to the Third Doctor, which means we're
Pertwee again.
We're going back to John Pertwee. We're going back to color, and we're going back to the 70s.
Ooh.
So
I survived the 70s too. I'll be honest with you, I like the 60s better.
Nah. Well, we will get to that when we get to that next week. So, with that all being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.